Welcome back, and we're talking to our guest, Peter Mendelsohn, the president of Blue Water Wind, and we're going to jump right in because we have so much to talk about. Are you Don Quixote was the question that was asked.
Well, people often say that about me. I say that rather than tilting at windmills, I'd rather build them. But what's interesting about Don Quixote, I went back and reread the novel we all read in high school, is Quixote, who was a romantic, looked on the horizon at what was then new technology in Spain and saw these hulking monsters, and he decided to attack them. His sidekick, Sancho Panza, who had to support himself and his wife had to make their own bread, was grinding grain by hand, and Sancho Panza in the novel saw it as an energy-saving device, so he was supportive of windmills because his family had to grind grain, and the windmill would grind the grain for his wife. So really today it's the same thing. There are those people who feel that the seascape is and should remain forever pristine, and there are those who see them, all the environmental leaders particularly who've written much more eloquently about this than I have, that this is a welcomed part of the landscape. In Europe, both on land and offshore, they put the offshore turbines closer. They have on-land turbines much closer to their homes. They see them as a welcomed part of the landscape. Freedom from fossil fuels, freedom from climate change, health benefits, and price stability. So again, it's a matter of perception. Quixote had a romantic, wrong perception, and so he tilted at windmills. Those of us who see them clearly, Sancho Panza and folks at Blue Water, welcome them and want to build them.
And also, it's a matter of necessity now with global warming. That's the one piece that wasn't there. It's a matter of necessity to have energy created that does not pollute the planet. And Doug's got a question for you.
Well, actually, I was going to point out that last week we actually mentioned a Reader's View letter to our local newspaper here in Delaware, talking about the wind farms in New Zealand and how beautiful they were and how almost wanted to put you to sleep. You almost wanted to put out a lawn chair, watch them until they put you nap time.
Oh, they love them there.
No, yes, you're right. And one of the things to tell your listeners is that the newer technology, particularly the offshore turbines, as the blades get larger, the rotational speed gets slower.
Right.
And so those of us who remember LP albums, which were 33 revolutions per minute, the offshore turbines spin at 8 to 15 revolutions per minute. So the fastest is 1 every 4 seconds. Take your hand at 12 o'clock and move around 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000.
So
the visual's not so good on radio, but
we're doing it.
So
we're
I could
doing
actually
it here in the studio.
I could actually play some of my parents' old 16s on there then.
There you go. Much more gentle.
All right, we're running out of time here. Let's talk quickly about fossil fuels, the cost, how wind fits in. Can you compare it to coal and nuclear?
Really what Blue Water was most impressed by is the tremendous thoughtfulness of all of the Delaware officials from the governor on down in the review process. This was a totally open process. The chair of the Public Service Commission said this was the most involved process in the history of the state public service review. We welcomed that review. Lots of consultants, hundreds of people who spoke, thousands of people that we spoke to. At the end of the day, wind was chosen over coal and gas. And we feel that that's because people understood the true value of wind. We've talked about the health benefits, we've talked about the planet benefits, we've talked about the local environmental benefits, and of course we've talked about the energy stability benefits and energy security benefits. We live in a dangerous world. Energy supplies are insecure. The U.S. has approximately 3% of the natural gas reserves in the world. These three countries that we have some concerns about, Russia, Yemen, and Iran, they have 60% of the world's natural gas. I happen to believe that we should have control of our energy future and not be beholden to countries such as that.
Absolutely makes sense. We have a couple of minutes left. Let's talk about the project here in Delaware. I know that you can't talk about every aspect of it, but tell us what you can about where the project is, where you are in getting this thing sort of out there to being built.
We were directed by the Public Service Commission, as was Delmarva, to get into a room and to stay quiet. And we've done that, and Delmarva has done that, and we really honor the process.
Okay.
I can't talk about it specifically, but I can tell you that we're in regular negotiations. They're fruitful. They're very detailed, and I believe that we will come out of the room with a good project for Delaware, certainly a good project for the ratepayers, and a good project in terms of giving environmental and health benefits to all the residents of Delaware.
Do you think this will start something up and down the East Coast? Is this what we're waiting for, one project to get approved?
Yes, and
Okay.
Delaware made history, the first state. The first contract we signed was with DMEC, all the municipal utilities in Delaware that signed a deal with us before we won the Delmarva bid. So really Delaware, the first state, made history twice. First state to do the first offshore contract, first state to have a public review and approval of an offshore contract, and Delaware will lead the way up and down the eastern seaboard. Once the first state does it, then all the others will follow. It's great that Delaware is in the lead.
They don't call us the first state for nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's get going. So, what do you see? How much of the percentage of electricity that we need can we get from wind in this country? I'm going to ask you some quick questions, and if you don't know the answers, I know they're big questions, but what can we see? We're going to get 20% from wind. We're going to get 25%. What's our capacity from the mountains and from the oceans?
Certainly, the immediately developable resource in the near term is 20% by 2020. That's a number that President Bush has talked about. That's a number that the American Wind Energy Association has talked about, and that's certainly a number that I believe is readily doable. Your leading academic in Delaware, Professor Willard Kempton,
Right.
has done an analysis that suggests that on an energy equivalent basis, you could provide all of the eastern seaboard's electricity from offshore wind.
Oh, that's amazing.
100%.
Oh, that's excellent.
Now, let me talk about something, because I know your listeners are thinking, well, Peter, what about intermittency? The wind doesn't blow all the time.
All right, go ahead.
I can tell you within a fairly narrow range what the wind will do in March of 2017 off Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
And as we have more meteorological towers and more operational projects, we get better and better at forecasting and scheduling. So wind will be a good generator on the system. You can have more and more wind. Many of the countries of Europe already have 20% of their grid wind, and Denmark is headed to 50%. And what you do is you schedule and forecast the wind, and when the wind is blowing, the fossil plants ramp down, and when the wind is not blowing, the fossil plants ramp up. Where the deep environmentalists are going, the folks at NRDC and people like Leo DiCaprio, who has a great new documentary on climate change, where they're going is a wind hydrogen system where when the wind is blowing,
Right.
you're using electricity. When the wind is not blowing, you've stored up hydrogen from excess wind at night, and you're using that to power generators and vehicles. So
Right.
that you move from the hydrocarbon economy to the hydrogen economy.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy to get hydrogen from seawater, and we have about 15 seconds to. Is anything you want to say to our listeners as you go out the door, Peter?
Just to say, Blue Water is so impressed at the level of thoughtfulness and involvement on behalf of all Delawareans, and we're really excited to build a great project for Delaware.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to have you back. I know there's so much more to talk about. Please enjoy the rest of your day. We're going to do our goodbyes and go. And everybody, think wind. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Peter.
Pete.
We'd like to sign off by thanking our sponsors, SunTrust Mortgage, CMI Electric, Energy Services Group, MyEcoAgent.com, and the Option Insurance Group. And Paul, who do we have as a guest next week? Do you have any clue this time?
I believe we have Julie Hershey from the Philadelphia Eagles, who's coming to talk about Go Green, the big Eagles move on saving energy and reducing their carbon footprint at the players' homes. And
I'm going to be
stadium.
sick next week.
As a Giants fan, what can you do?
I'm calling in sick next week.
All right.
I can't do it.
I'll be happy to greet the Eagles.
That's fine. You and Brooke over there,
Okay.
the green people.
Brooke,
John,
the new
you're
intern.
going to call in sick too?
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We will talk to you next week. Have a great week, and take care of each other.
All right. Have a good Sunday.